Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. The first week of 2023. Happy New Year to everybody.
Year.
I will come on to your New Year in a moment, Tiff, but we are going to talk about Dakar, just kicked off a couple of days ago. Very exciting race. We're going to talk about women in motorsport. And as it's a little bit of a quiet week, if only we had an ex-Formula One driver, ex-Le Mans racing driver that we could ask a couple of questions to on this podcast, which of course is Tiff Needell, and I will ask him a couple of questions just to pass a little bit of time. But how was your New Year, Tiff?
Terrible. Well, lovely. I had the family at home, but the dishwasher broke. I got two small central heating boilers for my piling old Victorian house. They're both leaking and need replacing. My computer's crashed, so I haven't got a computer to play with, and I've only got a mobile phone apart from borrowing my wife's iPad for doing these things. It's all a disaster, really.
But you've missed out another thing that maybe hasn't gone your way. Southampton, where are they in the Premiership?
And my football team is at the bottom of the league. And we went to Fulham. I thought we might actually get a point at Fulham, but we had a good eye. We're still going. In fact, on Wednesday night is Nottingham Forest. We thought we might get some points off them, but even they managed to draw with Chelsea at the weekend.
So it hasn't been the best. Well, it can only get better.
So that's why I'm looking at Dakar to cheer myself up.
Okay, what have you got to tell us about Dakar? I mean, what a race, what a history.
Well, you're going there, aren't you?
I am.
Where are you going out? Which day are you going out on? Have you got your schedule?
Thank you very much, Audi UK. Mm-hmm. I'm going on the 13th of January, so I'm very excited. Friday the 13th.
Oh, that's towards the end, isn't it? By then,
it is. So
I forget which day it runs to.
Well, I think Audi, because of course they're the hot favourites. I think they're expecting to get us all cheering them on for the win. So
and I love the Dakar. I mean, it gets me out of every year I watch it. We've got this amazing on Eurosport, 8 o'clock every night. Eurosport 1 to 8 p.m. They do the 1 hour show. They got Carlton Kirby. Carlton Kirby, who I love. He just waffles on, meanders through everything. And some very humorous comments, no shouting or screaming. And he to me is the commentator of the year when he does Dakar. He's just perfect.
What makes him so good?
He just sort of sets the scene. I wonder, look at these scenes. And he jokes a bit about the names. He has little chuckly jokes he has. And just talks us through what's going on in a lovely, relaxed. Sometimes you think he doesn't know what he's talking about. He wanders off to one side. It's just a very relaxing hour of motorsport with the most stunning photography. I mean, the shots they get, quite often catching an accident live. Helicopters are up there following everything down, and the stunning scenery, and just the endurance of it. Because there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 different classes. About 4 main ones they cover. Obviously, the trucks, the cars, the bikes, and the quad bikes. So they always have these little privateer ones where they bring their own videos, and you see these privateers that have dreamed of taking their motorcycle to the Dakar for about 20 years. Then you see them at 2 a.m. in the dark, falling off a sand dune, exhausted, trying to pick the bike up again, getting into the finish at 3 a.m. and then having to start again at 5 a.m. I mean, just amazing endurance. It's 8,000 kilometers through the desert over these 15 days. Each stage is like 200 miles. The stages, and I just think it's fascinating. Just the human effort and the joy and the despair. It's everything motorsport gives to people in many ways. And all there in these 2 weeks.
In the middle of the desert, you get a puncture or something, and you got to sort it out yourself.
Amazing now, the sort of prototypes have these sort of self-jacking. Whole metal plate goes down underneath, lifts everything up in the air. But it's Audi, of course. The big story is Audi have got this amazing e-tron. They said it's the most complicated competition vehicle they've ever made. It's this 4-wheel drive, all electric drive on the wheels. It's got this little 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine as the generator. So that's running, I think, 80% of the time to just fill up the batteries to power the wheels. It's an incredibly complex machine. And there's 3 of those running, 3 factory Audis. There's 6 Toyotas out there with Nasser Al-Attiyah is always the biggest character in the Toyota. He won it last year. I might be wrong. Yes, he did. Sort of 6 Toyotas running out. There's 4 Minis that are a bit sort of old now, older on the hat. And then there's these 4 pro-drive cars, these Hunters. They've now made a road version of them. You can buy one if you want for about 2 million or 10 million or whatever million you have in your back pocket. Sebastian Loeb drives one of the Hunters. So you've got, 6, 10, nearly 20 potential winners in the car class. And it's just brilliant to watch. And it started off day one with, our British champion, the bike rider, Sam Sunderland, number 1 on his plate, interviewed before the event and looking forward. He won it, I think, in 2017. And he's out. He's in hospital. Day one, the reigning champion hit a rock. He says hit a bit of a rock hidden in soft sand, and he's broken his hip. I think is bad. His pelvis, maybe a shoulder, and a lot of men. There's a few rollovers and retirements on day one. You just never know when a Dakar is going to bite you as a competitor.
You certainly need a bit of luck as well, don't you?
Yeah, to get through. And the cars. Carlos, there's a little bit of Needell. Nasser Al-Attiyah, he's quite a character, this Qatar boy, and he's always winding people up. And even on the interview before this event started, he's of course, Dakar, you have to think and worry and decide what your strategy is going to be, and there's so much peril. So I always go flat out. And he does, he drives flat out. But he and Carlos Sainz having a bit of a wind up, because Carlos Sainz, a bit like Fernando Alonso in Formula One, he's always on a bit of a mode and a complaint that the world's against him, because the Audis with their electric drive, they have to have an extra 100 kilos of weight on the regulation, so they're running 100 kilos heavier. But of course, they've got that instant torque. The electric power is perfect for powering through poor grip and getting up mountains of sand. So Sainz was complaining, and then Al-Attiyah, Nasser go at Carlos. He's always moaning, So a little bit of Needle between Audi and the rest of the field. But then Sainz, stage one is a puncture, which must take them about 2 or 3 or 4 minutes to change. They've got to get the wheel out, they've got to put the wheel back.
At least.
Yeah. And then he's just blast through from about 23rd and dropped to win the first stage, So the Audi's definitely the quickest machine out there, I think. It should be theirs to win, as you say. But little things like, because the Stefan Petter Hansel, he's down in about 9th place after day one, 8th overall, so he didn't exactly blast through in his Audi. And Mattis Ekstrom, the Swedish kid, who's he finished 3rd overall on the stage, but then at a 15-minute penalty because he missed one of the bye markers. Obviously, you've always got to go near these markers in the middle of the desert. You've got to go near enough for your computer to trip. So that dropped him. He's now 15 minutes behind Sainz in 13th place. So you only got to miss one of these navigation points by that. But 15 minutes at this stage, they say, well, that's nothing. You can catch 15 minutes up over the days. But it's interesting. End of day one, you've got Audi in first place, Seb Loeb second in a Hunter, one of pro-drive cars. Then Al Raji from Saudi in third in a Toyota. Then another Hunter, then another Hunter, then another Toyota. So it's packed up the front. And then you have these weird side-by-sides, these different classes, T1, T2, T3, T4. You have these little buggies side-by-side. They're not motorbike engines, I think, in the back. I'm not sure what they are. I need to look into more detail. But, you just look at all these things. The bikes at the end of day one, all the big stars are up there. Who we had, so leading is American Ricky Brabec, who was the 2020 winner. Then second is the Argentinian Benavides, who was a 2021 winner. But in third place is the Australian Toby Price, who's a 2019 winner. So all the stars are there. As I said, but then you lose Sam Sunderland on day one. It's just so much going on. Speaking
of stars, can you imagine when this first launched this race? Of course, it was from Paris to Dakar. But can you imagine having to navigate with the stars and how the sky must look in the middle of the desert with no light pollution and you see all the stars? It just would have been magical. Would have been very stressful as well. But
you love it when you see some of these shots. And there's bikes going in different directions. There's a couple of bikes. You see some of them doing a 360-degree donut to try and watch where they, get their guidance from their computer readouts and where they need to be next.
Recalibrating.
You see these crossing cars, they just get so lost. And you see people stuck, in the dunes. You see them digging a car out, which sometimes takes 10, 15, 30 minutes. And then sometimes they can drive 100 yards and get stuck again. And then you want to get out with your spades.
Soul destroying. Really soul destroying.
But, you know, I love it. It's just such a good story. I mean, I don't know how many. There are 91 classics out there. There's now a classic division that goes an easier route. There are about 70 cars, 50 bikes, trucks.
Wow. I'm excited. You've whetted my appetite even more now.
No, you must. You know, Audi's got this amazing machine. I mean, talk about science going ahead. You know, it doesn't need to have a charging station. I mean, having a bit of a laugh for the EV boys on Twitter. Lawrence Whittaker's been around up to Scotland and back and found these charging stations with like 4-hour queues of 40 Teslas, all because, you know, as soon as you leave your home charger, where it all works fine if you've got your home charger, go on a winter trip somewhere, then everybody's looking for the charging points in not out of the way places.
Well, we digress a little bit, but for sure, now that it's not the normal charge from home, go to work, or go to the office or whatever, now that people actually over the holidays did different trips, people realize there are 4-hour queues. And there are people who are tweeting. Jay Ward from Ford said, when you get to 80%, the etiquette is you should get off your charger, let someone else get on there because there's a big queue. And other people saying, hang on a minute, so if I've got to travel 200 miles and I need that range, why can't I stay on my charger? So that's another.
And also, I'm in the restaurant having a nice lunch and the food's a bit late, so I'll come back to my car when I've finished my lunch.
Do you know, that's one thing I noticed with charging electric cars. I spent so much money whilst you're waiting, you end up having food. You end up, and people say you eat anyway, but you don't. You get a sandwich on the way. It's very different. But we'll
of course, the Dakar. I mean, I suppose the Dakar will not exist. You know, when it's all electric. I mean, you can't do 500 kilometers in a day without a charger. Unless they can have sort of huge charging stations, helicopters out to the middle of the desert.
Electric is not the solution. It is not the solution.
Hybrids is the way we should have gone, but everybody's jumped the gun and gone full electric. Anyway, watch the Dakar. You've got 2 weeks of it, sitting on your telly and watching these most amazing shots. Listen to Carlton. Why do I keep on you Colton? Listen to Carlton waffling off into the day. Just talk some pictures. He's probably in London somewhere. And it's just great entertainment.
He'll be there for the atmosphere, I'm sure. He'll be in a booth somewhere, but he'll be there for the atmosphere. Tiff, you told me about a good podcast called Motor Mouth.
Yes.
That I think is run by some cool kids and
very good podcast. They got Alex Albon there. We need better guests. Come on, they're getting Albon on. You know,
I know, but I did see your tweet, and it's about women in motorsport. So I'll let you, because you were a bit sort of vocal about it.
I'm having a bad time. Ross Brawn wound me up about Formula One, saying he thinks regulations are great and the whole world is happy. The Motormouth had these two guests on before Christmas. Chris Maitland, a very well-respected Formula One journalist, and his partner, Jess McFadden, who works for motorsport.net. And they were the guests, and they just wanted to kick off about women in motorsport and how they're so hard done by. And I just think I'm tired. I've actually tweeted that they're sort of blaming motorsport for not letting women in. Chris was very good about, Jamie Chadwick. He sort of said, well, it's hard to tell whether she's quick enough to be a Formula One driver at this stage in her career. She's gone off to America now to do Indy Lights or Indy FX, whatever it's called now.
Indy Lights, yeah.
Which he likened to Formula 3, which I thought was a bit disingenuous to Indy Lights, because it's the second rating to IndyCar. So it'd be good to see how well Jamie gets on there. Then he started talking about this, but a woman can't fit into the car and the power steering. And it gradually started to move off into we should have several all-women series, because if they just do this one series isn't enough for them, because they don't get enough seat time. And this I'll come to in a minute. Seat time drives me mad. And then we must change the cars to suit women. And then Jess came on to continue that theory, and was very much sort of motorsport was invented by men for men, and men dominated it, and women were shied away. And that just isn't true. I mean, in Brooklands before the war, as I often say, Kay Peter, a very good female driver, was well respected, encouraged. And I've always encouraged any woman I've got, or young girl. I have never seen this sort of pushing women away. Maria Teresa de Filippi, she bought a Maserati 250F and tried to do some Grand Prix in the 50s. And I don't think the sport has been anti-women. I honestly believe it's just a sort of sport where most women probably didn't want to do, they just preferred to do something different. Or,
it's a bit like football. My daughter plays football; she always has done. But she's a minority in her class, in her year at school. She's a minority. They struggle to get a team in my town.
Not enough of them wanting to do it.
Yeah, because it's just a different sport. Lots of them play hockey, lots play netball. Yeah. But now it's a very inclusive world, and now everybody has opportunities. But
I'm what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because Jess then went on, which annoyed me a bit more. She went. She and Chris went over to the American race school. They're invited over for a nice little jolly.
Where do we get
which one it
is? Oh,
I don't know.
I'm going to Saudi Arabia.
And her problem, which I can understand, was that, the helmet, there was no helmet small enough. She's obviously quite a petite lady. I don't know. I've never seen her size, but I presume she's got a smallish head. And the suits were a bit baggy and they couldn't get the right boots. But, I work at Thrux, and all these corporates or outing places, they have small, medium and large. They can't buy every size. They haven't got the budgets in many ways. But even so, there are plenty of small men, small young boys that have small heads, and it's this implication that the whole setup is anti-women getting involved. And so she's sort of saying, well, women can't get into these cars because they don't fit, they've got wide hips and they're too small. But what about a 6'4" man weighing 20 stone that dreams of being a racing driver? He can't be a racing driver either. He's 6'4". Nobody's going to make a car. I mean, luckily Grand Prix cars have got bigger. But I spent my whole career with bruised elbows, bruised knees. I suffered a lot of discomfort trying to be competitive. As you know, you need to be as relaxed as possible to be fit and comfortable. And, a racing driver ideal height is about 5'9", 5'10". You're the perfect size. And so, I suffered for not fitting racing cars my whole career. And I don't think you can demand the sport makes every car. I remember Frank Durney, the Lotus engineer designer, when I went to try and fit into the Lotus to do a test for Top Gear in the 90s. And I pretty much couldn't get in. I mean, I remember the Leighton house that was built around Tiny, who was the driver at the time. And the monocoques just got so small, tight around everybody because the designers wanted a smaller opening in their monocoque for torsional rigidity. And they were so small. And Frank Durney told me, well, Tiff, you just got to wake up to the fact that motors racing is for jockey-sized drivers. Sorry, mate.
Who was it that famously chopped the toes off his shoes?
Well, James Hunt. Yeah. I've had to do it as well. James Hunt did it. I've had to do it because my feet were too big to get into the bottom of the monocoque. So I think, I appreciate Jess was annoyed that her helmet was jumped. I've known people where the helmets wasn't available, put some socks in the top of the helmet so it fitted better. She could have tried that. So I understand that she couldn't fit the school cars on the school uniform. But, I don't think that's aimed at women only. It's just a size thing. As I said, the 6'3" man couldn't get in a racing car.
Or the 5'2" man.
Yeah, or the 5'2".
We're not heighted here because I'm a short ass.
But, then they get onto this seat time business that annoys me because then it's sort of, they do the W series, but they don't get much seat time. If that's all they do, if that's all they do, they then come out to try to do Formula 3. Well, its implication is all these rich boys. There's hundreds of thousands of young men with loads of seat time. But that seat time has been bought by their parents. So you can't demand to go into motorsport.
I don't know that many race drivers. The people I speak to regularly, Dino Zamparelli, I speak to all the time. He goes to where I play squash. Jack Goff. These are, Dino was a bright young
good
star.
Jack
Goff, amazing BTCC driver. These guys can't get drives. They end up being driver.
They haven't got the money.
Nothing wrong being a driver coach, but they are exceptional talents. Exceptional. It's the same for them. But because it's such an easy target to say we're not getting enough time. We're ladies, and it's all against us. It's rubbish. It's not.
Well, Jess did say, at one stage, which she said, I think Jamie bought a bit of testing time with her winnings. But that wasn't true. Jamie Chadwick comes from a fairly wealthy background. She'd karted from a kid. She did Janetta Juniors, She was bought a GT4 championship winning car, obviously sharing with a man. I don't know who was quicker, who was slow. I haven't got all the facts. And Jamie went out and raced in New Zealand and India and did these things before WC started. So because she had some wealth, she was like a young boy with a rich parent. She bought a lot of seat time. Jess said it was with her winnings, but after the rumour has it she used her winnings to buy a flat in London. But anyway, I'm not sure. Not fact, I'm told. So, you know, Jamie bought seat time. And it all boils down to the end. I mean, Juju Noda, one of the WCs, this Japanese girl, I mean, there are all these stories. She was driving Formula 3 cars when she was about 9 years old, wasn't she? So, I mean, her dad bought her a lot of seat time, but she hasn't yet, you know, shown the promise that we thought she might have. And I think, in all honesty, if we sort of walk away a bit and don't get so involved, it's literally because at 8 years old, if a dad says to a daughter and a son, do you want a pony or a go-kart? I still believe that most girls want a pony and most boys might want a go-kart. That's a totally random thought, but it's my thinking.
Well, I still believe well, the parents who are influential at that time, most fathers are going to encourage their son. It's just the way it is.
I know.
And most mothers are going to encourage them to. And the ones that defy that convention, good for you, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because we want to have more females in motor racing.
Well, we had a father down at Thruxton. They do their ARDS test, the junior ARDS, whatever junior ARDS is. And that was a father bringing in a 10-year-old daughter to get her racing license. And it's those people you have to go to. You have to go to the parents and say, you know, if we want a female Grand Prix driver, you know, you've got to take your girl karting aged 8. You've got to take your girl to Formula Ford and Formula 3 and GB4. You've got to pay for that. You know, motorsport doesn't have to pay for that.
There are phenomenal opportunities for females in motorsport. And for those that say there aren't, it's just simply not true. Put yourself in the shoes of Jack Goff, Dino Zamparelli, and the thousands of other incredibly talented men that just cannot get a drive, cannot get a seat anywhere at all. It's a meritocracy. It should be
there's
done
there's
on
some
merit.
great women throughout the years. I mean, Desiree
women,
Wilson I'd raced against, won a Formula 3. I mean, she was brilliant. She should have been a girl, but she was really the best female driver. You know, Davina Galizia had a good career. You know, Lella Lombardi. They've always been there. In fact, when they say it's just, you know, a boys thing, Susie Wolf, who was Susie Stoddart then, and Catherine Legg. Now, Catherine Legg, really talented female driver. She's now doing GT3s and stuff. She's in IndyCar for 2 years. But they were both given DTM rides because each manufacturer, BMW, Audi, and Mercedes, agreed, let's all have a woman each. Now, to be fair, they only got year-old cars. So they all ran around sort of towards the back of the field. So, you know, Catherine Legg and Susie both got professional drives because they were women. Susie did even better because she managed to meet Toto and marry a billionaire. So she got an extra bonus. So, you know, there have been so many. Ellen Law in Formula 3, she was really quick in Formula 3. Had a bad accident in Monaco. I think she damaged her arm. But she was at Monaco, this historique last year, hustling this old Formula 1 Ferrari, won the Formula the 1960s Grand Prix cars race. It was brilliant to watch. You know, Simona de Silvestre, really good driver. I mean, there's plenty of inspirational women.
And of course, Jamie Chadwick, her modern day.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so interesting.
Brilliant.
She's such a good She really do hope that she does well in Indy Lights or whatever it's called. And I just don't want every week to read her Twitter and have things like this. I've seen it throughout everybody's racing career where they say, the engineer didn't quite get it right, or we didn't get this strategy right, or this was wrong, the car wasn't running great, the tires, and it's never the driver. You know that, don't you? It's never, ever the driver. So I really hope that doesn't happen. I really hope Jamie has a fantastic...
Maybe we'll have to have a pod off. Can you have a pod off with Motormouth? Let's have a pod off. We challenge you to pod off. And I just fed up with motorsport being blamed. You know, the fact is, you know, if girls don't want to be racing karts even if daddy's really keen, if they don't want to race karts, they don't want to race karts.
Look at one of the most epic championships that's going on as we speak now. The World Darts Championship. Epicness. If you haven't seen it, you've got to watch it. But my point there's two ladies that compete on the circuit. But darts is not. You don't have to be a professional athlete. Look at the darts players. But why aren't there more darts players? It's the same as it's just that stereotypical.
I mean, still, I mean, maybe Jess is right. Maybe sort of young girls are intimidated. You know, they don't sort of feel that motorsport would welcome them. But I mean, that's a psychology thing, which I don't think is true. I don't think there are that many girls that want to do it.
You start off in karting, and it's a bit of an open book, really, isn't it? Sort of when you're young and you're karting, and I think it's more the parents than anything.
They even said, when they went karting that the girls had to have more padding behind the seats than anyone else. But there's plenty of small boys. Not all girls are small. I don't know. It was just a whole thing that motorsport was sort of not accommodating women like it ought to.
Right. Tiff Needell, ex-Formula One driver. You've raced in a few Le Mans, 14, I believe. You've done a thing or two. Tell me, Tiff Needell, what was your most memorable race ever? Because there's enough of women racing. No, I'm all for it. And that's not a negative. I just mean let's move on because...
I don't know. I was so lucky that I didn't... I was so lucky I didn't become a famous Grand Prix driver. It's a stupid thing to say, but I raced in some weird and wonderful places. And I think that because I didn't make it as a superstar, although I did do a Grand Prix, I drove a Grand Prix car around Monaco, so that was still a great thing. I did 14 Le Mans 24-hour races, which was, my best. But, I raced at Macau, I was battling for the lead when the gearbox broke and had some wonderful outings in Kuala Lumpur. I think Daytona 24-hour race, bizarrely, it was such a wonderful thing to go and do in January because it's such a different track. And in those days, there were like 84 cars and no lights at the infield and there were cars appearing off the grass. And I sort of still lived and raced in a sort of very wild old place. But I think, in Hockenheim, when I was running third in my second Formula 2 race and the engine blew, I mean, that was a pretty epic moment. So all my great stories seem to end up with things going wrong.
What's your best win? What's your best win? You must
it was third at Le Mans. I mean, big on the podium at Le Mans was probably, that was a finish. But, best wins were all in Formula Ford days, winning those days was just, when you won a battle in a Formula Ford, you knew you'd beat the whole field of young talent. So those are immensely satisfying.
So you didn't ever race against Ayrton Senna in Formula Ford? He was just...
No. I did the Formula 3 at Macau. I did the Formula 3 race at Macau. I think he was a bit quicker than me. I was in a bad car. Obviously, you've got to get in the right team. You go back to,
tyre pressure.
Back to the women again. Women say they can't fit in the cars. But even if once you fit the car, you've then got to get to the right team and the right thing. So he wins. I won a British touring car race in the Sierra Cosworth. That was quite an epic day out. And I think with the Lister Storm, towards the end of my career, when I finally got into the winning car, I ended my British GT series with 3 wins on the trot. Winning at Spa, that was very special in the list, the V12 Vista. And it was like Donington, Spa, Silverstone, 3 on the trot. And that was, I think that's probably Spa in the Lister Storm. Little epic drives.
Which driver have you ever met or come across in your career that should have gone on to do stuff, never did? Who was the most talented driver?
My era was a bit thin on the ground with talent. We had all the Brazilians coming up, but Jeff Lees, he just got his autobiography out actually. You can find it on Amazon somewhere. He was a very underrated. He was my main companion. We hated each other with a passion in 1975. We're now good mates. We play golf. But he had a few Grand Prix drives, and I thought he always had talent that wasn't quite recognised. But he was like a garage mechanic from Atherstone. He didn't fit the mould, perhaps. But yeah, very talented.
John Morrison, he was a tall.
Yeah, Super B. Yeah, Super B. But I never cross charts with him because he was a Super B man. But so most of my friends were all foreign. Stefan Johansson, the Swede, they all came to Britain to race in Formula 3. So my main competitors were mainly from overseas and not that many British talent, not much British talent.
But who was the best British talent? You must have raced against James Hunt.
No, he was ahead of me, wasn't he? About 2 or 3 years. So Jim Clark was the best. But in my era, we didn't have that mercurial British driver at that stage. When I didn't qualify for the Monaco Grand Prix in 1980, nor did John Watson, and it was the only Grand Prix with no British driver in it since about 1956 or something. So if you want a pub quiz, what was the last Grand Prix with no British drivers? It was me and John Watson failing to qualify.
I remember.
Then Nigel came in, I guess. He was the next, but I wouldn't call him a mercurial Jim Clark. I mean, he was just an amazing, hard, determined, gritty driver who just muscled the car around the track. Incredibly brave driver, Nigel. So then, I don't know, where are you going to go to now for a mercurial? Then we're going to Hamilton next. Who was in between? Jensen Button came up. He's a very real naturally talented.
Johnny Herbert won a few races.
Oh, Johnny Herbert. Should have been. Should have been. And that's the worst thing, that accident at Brands, which chopped his foot off. I think he was and he was about 5'6", wouldn't have fitted into a Grand Prix car sort of thing at the time. So yeah, there was a lot of talent.
Coulthard.
Yeah, Coulthard. I wouldn't say he was, Jim Clark. He was just a very good. There's been quite a few very Derek Warwick. Been a lot of very, very, very good British drivers.
We miss Mansell.
Nice. I've just mentioned Mansell. I just talked about him about 2 minutes ago. For good, you've just been reading a note. So you've been leaving me. What are you reading there? You're reading the Sunday paper while I'm talking.
I've got my notes here, but I've got a little stat for you. I like your stat about the last British winners, but little stat. Do you realise that Max Verstappen has won 2 world championships since Lewis Hamilton won his last race? Let that sink in. You're not interested, are you?
No. Tony Bryce. I was just thinking of Mercurial. Sadly was in the plane when Graham Hill crashed the plane with Tony Bryce. He was an outstanding talent. Tom Price, the Welshman who we lost, that unnecessary fire extinguisher accident in South Africa. So But now we have got 3 mercurial talents in Hamilton, Lando, and Russell, and of course.
Be careful how you throw that around, because mercurial talent is the best of the best of the best.
Oh,
the Schumachers, the Sennas,
I think we've
Hamiltons.
got and Lando.
I think Lando's there, but I don't think George is.
We shall see. We shall see.
So we'll talk about some predictions next week for Formula One, because we can't wait for that to start again or kick off. I guess
we should get some gossip coming in, shouldn't we? I mean, it's great now because we've got Dakar keeps us going for a couple of weeks, and that leads us into Formula E. If you want opening the Formula E in January the 15th, there's a 24-hour Dubai race for GT3 fans, and then of course the Monte Carlo Rally starts on end of 22nd of January. Daytona 24 hours to the 29th. So it's a bit quiet now. It's all about to kick off again in the wonderful world of motorsports.
Join us next week. Thanks for joining this week. Join us next week.
Cheers.
Happy New Year.
I'll go fix my computer now. I'm a dishwasher. I'm a boilers.
I'll read the rest of my paper.